Hello, beloved family. It's Nicole, and today's Tuesday transmission is about Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, and Jesus, Yeshua. As many of you know, if you've seen some of these series, this is a video log of quantum healings that I've done with a healer, a friend of mine named Michael Garber. And through these quantum healings, I have started to reveal the fractals of Mary Magdalene's story as relates to Yeshua. And for many of you, if you've gone and seen the other videos, you will see that my son's name is Yeshua. And there's a whole story behind that I reveal in other videos. And that name came to me, and I had a spiritual conception of Yeshua before he was ever conceived and born. And when Michael, the healer that I work with, found out about Yeshua's name, he was very curious to see what else resided in my Akashic records. And we have had quite a journey. So this log really is about Mary Magdalene and Yeshua and their relationship. And what I felt in my healing sessions was a very, very exquisite, deep, romantic love. And it was much more than just a romantic love. It was a mission and purpose, soul-driven, purposeful relationship about reclaiming sovereignty and understanding energy and using that information to bring an ascended quality to humanity when humanity was really in a dark time. So what I want to share, I have some notes here, but really is about the energy work that they did together, a little bit about things that I saw, star systems that I was privy to, and then a little bit about the Sophia Code, because I came into the Sophia Code knowledge after this information, and a lot of dots got connected for me, and it all really was supported and corroborated through those texts. And I find it all fascinating, so I want to share it. Now, this could be a trigger warning, you know, for people who have different viewpoints and belief systems, and that's okay. I grew up in a Catholic household with an ex-nun as a mom, and would go to church every single Sunday, and went through all the initiations of that, and never did it really feel quite right for me. And I didn't understand why or how until much later in my life. And now that I know this information, I really understand why at a deeper level. One thing I have shared is that I would go to church and I would see the figure of Jesus, of Yeshua on a cross, nailed to the cross, and it used to bring me to tears every single time. And you might say, well, it's a child seeing someone nailed to a cross. That's pretty brutal in and of itself. And it is to look at as a young child. It's pretty scary, I would say, and fear-driven. But what I also realized was I had experienced in past lifetimes a deep love, or have come into the story of deep love around Christ consciousness and Christ as a person in and of himself, and that could be a reason why that would happen. So first, I wanted to say from the Sophia Code that it is said in here that really Mary Magdalene came in as a woman for revolutionary change, and I did feel that within those quantum healings, that she had a lot of power in and of herself. She had been gifted a lot of opportunities in her life. She was often seen in my quantum healings traveling with her father and going to places like Egypt and mystery school trainings. When I first came into relationship with the story of Mary Magdalene, I actually saw her in a room with Mother Mary, and they were in a coven, like 13 priestesses in it almost seemed like a hall, some sort of, or cave. It was a dark kind of cavernous place, and they were doing a lot of work with energy. And I saw them always in circles working with the Merkaba, working with energy systems, and creating these circles where they would pray, and Mother Mary's innocence, her purity, her command of the power of purity, of pure word, could literally manifest things into form. And she was being trained by her in these mystical arts and healing arts. And Mother Mary had a relationship with her because of Mary Magdalene's training. And they shared a lot of mystery school teachings and trainings and were quite close. In fact, Mother Mary was mentoring Mary Magdalene. So I did get that through the quantum healings. And then as I came into the Sophia Code, I recognized that a lot of this information actually is in here, that they used to sit together. They used to talk a lot about different teachings. It talks about a place in here called Mount Carmel. And in my quantum healings, they kept saying, "Where are you?" And I kept saying mountain, and then I'd say with a C. I didn't know it was called Mount Carmel, but now that makes a lot of sense. And so Mount Carmel was the community in which the ministry was, and that's where they were doing a lot of their work, or where she was doing a lot of her mystery school training. Then I read here about, Mary wanting to meet, Mother Mary wanting Mary to meet Yeshua, and how she had set that up. And what I got through the quantum healings was that really Mary Magdalene was being trained. She was being trained to work with energy systems. She was being trained to work with Tantra, with breathing techniques, and with meditation techniques that would bring the Kundalini serpent and energy up the spine. And I kept getting around the head, almost like these snake-like, cobra-like symbols, and that there was energy that would get circulated through the body. Since I've come to realize that is how we access the Amrita and the fluids that get released through I believe it's the pituitary gland or the pineal gland, or maybe it's both. I'm not completely sure. But I saw those visions within the quantum healings and was really fascinated by that. So I would see Mary going into caves often, and going into the forest often, and being in nature. And she always had this cloak on, this long cloak. It was like this really beautiful, almost like velvet, long, dark cape cloak. And she would go into nature, and she would sit with the trees, and she would sit in nature, sometimes in the dark, sometimes during the day. And eventually she did meet Yeshua. She did meet Jesus, and they had a very deep connection because they were both trained in the arts of mystery school training. They could basically telepathically communicate, and they would meet in these places, like in the forest. I saw this cave that they would often meet in, and they would discuss these different trainings. They would discuss energy work a lot, and they would practice breathing techniques and eventually the sexual techniques of Tantra to raise the Kundalini energy and use this as power, as manifesting power, as ascension power. And she understood her training to be partly to raise the energy and the frequency of her Ka body and Yeshua's Ka body, so that when he actually passed through the death initiation process, he could actually be a way shower of light through that process, and have almost like this light corridor that would bring people through the process of death in a more conscious and aware way, an awakened way. And that's what I kept seeing within the healings, was that he was like almost like a light shining, or a what is it called, a flashlight going through a corridor, and that would pave the way for other people to come through that initiation with more awareness and more consciousness. as like a death doula, so to speak. And that if they could raise his Ka body and his energy enough as he went through that initiation, he could actually keep his light body and return where, you know, this is the resurrection story. He'd come back and he would never really leave. His Ka body would extend through and people would be able to see him through that veil. And yeah, so that's a lot that I just gave. Let me slow down. It's very exciting stuff. I would also see them often running on horseback. I would see them in boats moving from one place to another. I would see them in different places, traveling quite a bit, is what I wrote here. Traveling in woods, across the seas, giving a lot of talks. Jesus, Yeshua had his ministry, his spiritual ministry. They were in Palestine for some time, and Mary Magdalene also had her ministry, which was about feminine empowerment and overcoming the suppression of the feminine. And she had a very strong voice and found partnership within her communion with Yeshua. They were partners in this ascension process as divine masculine and divine feminine in union. He supported her work just as much as she supported him. But you know, the sign of those times was that women weren't allowed to speak in these ways. So she spoke her truth as a supporter of Yeshua's ministry, which was really very similar to her own. There was a really beautiful scene where I saw them sitting under the stars one night, and they were looking up at the stars, and she was asking him where the star system was that he knew to be coming from, or what was what was the star system, and he said Sirius. So Sirius was the star system, and what I remember is a light coming down from this constellation, this area, and it was so intensely bright. It was like he was bringing that energy or that light into his body, and he could harness it, he could connect with it, and it got so massive and so big, it was like blinding. And that was something that I remember that was really incredible. I also saw him, oh that's right, I saw many people moving into like almost like jail systems, being captured. And then I did see this time where he was brought down a corridor and as a prisoner. And so I'm relating this to the time when he was basically taken to be put on the cross, because I did have a plant medicine ceremony very long time ago where I did see the whole scene play out, of him being put on the cross, coming down a corridor, people being able to see him moving through this space and occupying this big kind of square, and then being brought up onto the cross itself and sitting with Mother Mary. And so that was actually a scene that I witnessed within a plant medicine ceremony separate of the quantum healing. So a lot of these things are kind of being pieced together and coming together in a storyline format for me. What else did I write here? It's so much. It's like sometimes overwhelming. I can kind of feel how much this affects me. So very extraordinary. So in this Sophia Code, it talks about the high tantric training that she underwent for alchemizing large amounts of internal life force. So that was also supported here. It talks about Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene becoming dear friends. And it did talk about how Mother Mary Magdalene actually did a lot of trauma work, which I thought was interesting. I do a lot of trauma work in this body, in this lifetime as well. And so I was happy to see that that was something that she was really aware of and working through at that time. And I feel like this story could certainly be coming to us at this time as well, because we are, as women, ascending into our power at this time of ascension, coming into the more matriarchal, divine feminine awareness, that we are overcoming still the remnants of this oppression, suppression, punishment, and fear stories that run very deeply through our lineage, and why these stories are now coming to light at a more rapid rate. I know I'm not the only one who was doing quantum healings where this story was coming through. And so these stories are coming through to remember that we are here to have these experiences of releasing trauma and abuse. And she talks here about energy extractions, exorcisms, releasing severe trauma out of women's bodies. And that also that Jesus, it says his integrity was immaculate, and his devoted acts for reconciling the divine feminine went above and beyond. So there was this spiritual alliance that they had, which was a true template for reconciling divine masculine and divine feminine. I loved reading that in the Sophia Code. And so, you know, this is information that's in here as well. All the dots starting to connect. And I wanted to just tell this story. This is part of my moving through this material. And then I did see a child being born. I don't know if I talked about this in one of the last videos, but the name that I received in my quantum healing was Sophia. And I was told that that was also the same name that other women have come up with. And Sophia was born after, nobody knew about Sophia. Only a few people knew about Sophia because they were afraid that Sophia would be killed. So Sophia was basically taken and into sanctity or into hiding. And I saw in the quantum healing that she was very happy and ended up getting married. And I didn't see, I had trouble seeing who the person was. Something like an F name or something to that effect. I'm not sure. And then or Mary Magdalene, it felt like in this story, fled to France. And I know that's where Mother Mary actually did as well. So there's a component there in Europe as well, living out some of the teachings, but most of it in hiding, so that, this information wouldn't be lost. So very, very interesting stuff. I will say that once that information came through and all the other videos that explain some of the other things, I have deepened my relationship with my own son here in physical form, Yeshua, in a way that feels really unifying and very different. It's almost like working out the union between masculine and feminine, and that divine tantric union of equality. You know, really seeing him as a teacher of the divine masculine, and me being able to step into more of teaching the divine feminine and the principles of that. And so it's just been an exciting time. If this material resonates with you, if you've had fractals of these stories coming to you as well, I would love to hear them, because this is part of the priestess work. This is part of the divine feminine work that's coming through on the planet right now. And I would love for women who've had these experiences to feel free to share the teachings and the things that they're learning through their bodies, through their cellular memory, and we can activate and deepen these stories within ourselves to really reconcile and heal the changed stories or the distorted stories that still might remain. So thank you for listening. I really appreciate it, and I wish you a very, very beautiful day.